Namaste and welcome to another edition, a very special edition of the Bharatvaarta Weekly. It's Diwali, and as you can see, all of us are in our Diwali best. Hey Nirav, hey Abhishek, happy Diwali to all of you.
Happy Diwali, Carrie and Nirav. Happy Diwali to our viewers.
So, what is your Diwali ritual like, Abhishek?
Nothing specific. Maybe a bit of crackers the evening. Yesterday, spent all of it watching the match, so the rest of the things have to follow today.
Yeah, yeah. So around here, what we do is we have like a oil bath, right? Dunk our heads in oil pretty much, and then have that hot water bath, and then the festivities start after that, the puja and the sweets and whatnot. How are things at your end, Nirav?
Yeah, so it is kind of the usual like puja sweets, a lot of relatives, family, friends coming over or visiting. And yeah, my highlight of the day is basically at night to go on the terrace and watch firecrackers and burst a
Yeah.
few. So I have like some few cousins kids who come over and they burst a few. But I think the main thing is sit and like watch the rest of the city bursting crackers and seeing the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of my favorite things as well, just to watch the fireworks in the night. And after a couple of years of kind of muted celebrations, I think
Yeah.
it's good to see everyone in full splendor outside. Happy Diwali, folks. And yeah, let us know how you celebrate as well. Well, for the weekly this week, I mean, we have a bunch of things that we want to cover. Of course, who can miss the India Pakistan match yesterday? That was thrilling encounter, a last ball finish, right? Now we'll talk about that. The UK drama that is unfolding. I mean, it continues to surprise all of us. Liz Truss has stepped down as the prime minister, and Rishi Sunak seems to be the likely next prime minister of UK. As they say, in times of a crisis, you call an Indian CEO, right? And then in politics, Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge is the new president of the INC, and then Pakistan is removed from the FATF list. ISRO launches 36 satellites in the first commercial launch for LVM-3, and India tests Agni Prime missile. All of this and more on this weekly. So let's begin with a match. Abhishek, Nirav, what are your thoughts on that fantastic match? Last ball finish. You can't ask for more.
Yeah, so anyways, as in this was like quite a good match, and I think one of the miscalculations of the captain was leaving the weaker bowler for the last over, right? And the fantastic chase by Kohli and Pandya, and I think if you saw this in a movie, like the last over, you would say that this is not credible. All the things, waist high full toss, which is a no ball, then getting out on a free hit, then a stumping, then a wide, etc. Right? So I think there was like too much drama compressed in an over. There are a lot of test matches where there are 5 days of less drama over 5 days. Then this had like in one over. So that was quite good. And no, so basically on the cricket episode, we discussed that these matches are quite critical because both sides, there are only three teams which are like contenders for the semi slot. So India to win versus Pakistan and South Africa is critical. So that was quite good. So we came out on top and fantastic batting by Kohli. I think he took his very calculated risks. The point which actually swung it in India's favor was two sixes in the 19th over on the last two balls of the 19th over. So that till then I had like no hopes, but the last over kind of, yeah. So it was really entertaining. And Ashwin's like well left wide and the one run. So that is like very nice, sensible thinking, sensible cricket. So that was quite nice to watch.
Yeah, the amount of game intelligence these guys have, right? Whether that is calling for the no ball or just letting that ball go down the leg side. I mean, that's just phenomenal, I think. And one must really appreciate the IPL for making all of those folks real thoroughbreds, right? Abhishek, what do you think about King Kohli? He's truly back, I think.
Yeah, I think, as he said, this is his best innings ever, especially in the T20 format, right? So the previous one, everyone agrees, is the 2016 match against Australia at Mohali. I think he scored the same number of runs, pretty much the same number of balls. But that chase was not as difficult. Like, even if he had not played so well, India probably would have won that match. There were others there. But yesterday, pretty much it was all down to him, right? Hardik Pandya did give him good support for a 100-run partnership, but even he was struggling. It was definitely not his best day. So yeah, I think, after 3 years of struggle, it definitely was like a return to form for Kohli, right? And I mean, I think I enjoyed his interviews as well, like almost as much as his innings. So there's few things he said that you can see that he has now sort of matured, right? He didn't say that, yeah, he was playing as well as I can and I dominated the bowling. He almost gave a sort of feeling that this was destiny, right? Like he said, I can't explain those two shots. It was just meant to be, right? Like, and that is true. I mean, if you look at the first shot, it is so extraordinary that only very few people can play it, and that too very few times in their life, right? Because what he's doing is, I mean, defying the basics of cricket there. Because in cricket, what do? We hit with a straight bat when the ball is pitched up, right? So the arc of our swing, hands goes like that. And when it is shorter, people play the horizontal bat shot, right? But this one is a rising ball. Even though it's a slower ball, it is rising well above the stump height, right? And yet he hits it with a straight bat. Now, generally, if you try that, the ball will lob to mid on and you'll get caught, right? So, for that to then go 85 meters is quite extraordinary, right? So, the next ball also, he played it purely on instinct, right? He is moving a bit around the crease. It's a quick ball on his pads and he just flicks it. I mean, flicks can go for a single to fine leg or maybe a four at best, right? But this one goes well over fine leg. So, I mean, he played purely on instinct. And I guess the thing I was thinking is, that people like Kohli have played so much cricket, right? Like it's all his years of tapasya finally coming to bear, right? At that moment where he just let his hands and his mind do the thing. There was nothing that you could have practiced specifically for that. It is all everything coming together at once, right? And of course, the last over was pretty much comedy of errors. But we had the smartest man in the world of cricket, Ashwin, right at the right moment. So I mean that leave that he did to take the wide is like tremendous, right? I mean, most people would have just swung their bats like what DK did. Like DK could have also taken that wide, right? But he was like a normal person. He was trying to hit the ball. But Ashwin was like too nonchalant. He just left it and then next ball, lifted it easily. So yeah, I think we got the right people at the end too. I mean, I felt like I was totally immersed while watching Kohli's innings, right? And even if he had lost it, I would have still have become quite hopeful because if suppose we lost by 5 runs or something, given how well Kohli played, like you feel that the hopes coming back, right? That okay, this guy is now getting close to his best and can only do well from here. So yeah, I mean, if you have seen the podcast we did on Friday night, I think all of us felt that we actually have a decent chance this World Cup because in Australia, Kohli always plays well and it kind of suits our strength, right? It is not just slam bang hitting that will happen in this World Cup. So yeah, I think hopefully with this win we should reach the semi-finals for sure. As long as we don't have a blowout defeat against South Africa, right? And then after that, it's just a matter of 2 games. So yeah, I'm definitely more hopeful about this team post yesterday's match than going into it. Yeah, Arshdeep was very good. We could have done a bit better after getting their two main batsmen out so cheaply. So there, I think we could have maybe kept them by 15, 20 runs lower. But Akshar had a fluke bad over, right? He went for 20 odd in 1 over, which is unfortunate, right? But those kind of things can happen. So yeah, I mean, there was nothing atrociously bad by anyone. It's just that we could have been a bit better. I mean, they got also a bit lucky where this guy Shan Masood, who was their top scorer, he hit a lofted ball and it hit the web camera, right? Otherwise, he would have been caught. So that probably added 10, 15 runs for them. So, I mean, all those kind of things happen in a match. But yeah, I think it was a good team selection overall and decent bowling.
So
We have the
apparently the
sixth
last
bowler.
three India-Pakistan matches have ended in the last over, right? Have finished in the last over, and so there were calls for perhaps more games between the two countries. But hopefully Pakistan recedes whatever they're doing at the border and some other mischief as well, right? That India can sort of entertain those thoughts. Yeah, Nirav, you were saying something.
No, so the difference here was we had a sixth bowler, Hardik Pandya, and then so if any bowler has an off day, you have that slack in the team, and Pakistan didn't have that. So I think
So I
that
think
was the
if you
big
see
difference.
the idea behind sending Akshar Patel up top was to delay Pakistan using their left arm spinner and leg spinner, right? Unfortunately, like he had a bad day with both the bat and ball, and this is where we are missing Jadeja probably, right? Because Jadeja would have probably helped out in the batting a lot more. Akshar has still some way to go, at least on the batting side, right, to come up to the level of Jadeja.
I'd love to see DK up the order, man. I mean, poor guy gets 4 or 5 balls every day, every time he plays, right? I mean, I think really, I mean, we should see what he's capable of. Anyway, I mean, before this turns into a full blown cricket episode, let's move on. Well, in the UK, there is high drama. The Liz Truss, who's the prime minister, just stepped down, and we might have an Indian origin prime minister in the UK, Rishi Sunak. On Thursday, the newly elected Prime Minister of the UK, Liz Truss, announced her resignation after just 6 weeks. She will go down as the shortest serving Prime Minister in the UK. The mini budget, financial markets' reaction to the mini budget, U turn upon U turn, and the appointment of a new Chancellor who disagreed with her every agenda, left her with no options but to resign. Rishi Sunak leads the race to become the next Prime Minister of the UK. Penny Mordaunt, a former defense minister, has also officially launched her campaign. Nirav, we've been following this for quite a while now, right? I mean, eventually it seems like it comes down to Rishi Sunak, with Boris Johnson also having withdrawn from the race.
Yeah, yeah. So Rishi Sunak was in the race with Liz Truss after Boris Johnson resigned on like Partygate scandal, etc. And there he missed out narrowly, right? Where all the Conservative Party members were there, and Liz Truss's promises were tax cuts, unfunded tax cuts, and increased spending and increased borrowing, which the financial markets didn't take it very well. So now, by default, given that she's out, hopefully, like Rishi Sunak does become the PM. He also had a sensible as a policy as equivalent of finance minister, the chancellor of the exchequer, where he was under PM Boris Johnson, and he resigned. Rishi Sunak resigned against Boris Johnson for the whole Partygate scandal, and like while restrictions of COVID were there on common citizens, Boris Johnson held a party himself. So I think based on that, he should be the front runner. Though there are obviously in politics, like a week is a long time, there could be a lot of people and different factions within the Conservative Party which might have issues against him. Either like because he's opposed Boris Johnson, the Bojo faction could kind of like scuttle his things. And Penny Mordaunt is one of the outsiders, right? She's not been like a very long time minister. What is happening is UK is seeing a huge amount of churn in since Brexit in 2016, when David Cameron resigned. You had Theresa May, Boris Johnson, and now Liz Truss, right? You had like 4 prime ministers in about like 6 years, and now you will have the 5th one, right? So because Boris Johnson is no longer running, so it's not as if he's coming back. So I think this is a big time of chaos. It's a lot of this volatility in financial markets, rising interest rates globally, rising inflation. There's a war between Russia and Ukraine, so rising energy prices. So I think it's a very tough time. So whoever it is, probably, hopefully, sometimes it helps. So for maybe Rishi, it was a good toss to lose to Liz Truss first. And now that it has been so shambolic, even if he inherits a crown of thorns, or even if it is Penny Mordaunt, whoever, basically by coming in just after such a lot of chaotic 6 weeks, it's just been 6 weeks of her leadership, actually kind of gives you like a clean slate and a fresh start, right? So hopefully there is stability going forward. From an India's perspective, we've had this UK FTA put on the back burner right now. Boris Johnson was supporting it. I think Liz Truss, she was handling a lot of things and they're a bit chaotic. So hopefully, if Rishi Sunak does come in, there is a bit of that. Post Brexit, the migration from EU is a lot tougher, and then hopefully with an FTA and freer movement of people, probably working visas for like Indians as well as like Indian companies to set up operations in the UK, or for British companies to set up operations in India, helps out. So I think all in all should be like a positive development, and fingers crossed this leads to better relationship between UK and India, right? And only thing which might, like I've said this before, the potential problem which Labour has raised earlier with Rishi Sunak is like his wife is still an Indian citizen, and his father-in-law was ex-CEO of a large Indian IT company, Infosys, so which could kind of have some sort of conflict of interest. But given all the other things which have happened in the UK, right? Probably he's one of the saner heads and like a steady hand. So I think the bookies at least favor Rishi Sunak coming back. He's got support of like about 150 MPs, but UK has 650 MPs, and I think the Conservative Party had like 350 of them, right? So doesn't really have like a super majority within that. But let's see. It's going to be interesting times, and fingers crossed. Whoever comes in, we'll have a little bit better UK-India relationship, and more trade, more technology, and people transfer, etc. So, right, that helps a lot.
Yeah. Is he a popular figure, though, Nirav? I mean, I was, seeing lot of tweets, calling him elitist and so on. And in fact, I mean, a few of the Indian origin folks in the UK as well, like, Suella Braverman, Preeti Patel, etc., don't really support him also. Right? Anything
Yeah. So,
you
so
can
the thing
comment on
is,
that?
he is so traditionally Indian diaspora in the UK voted Labour, right, with the income and demographics profile, and there's been a slow shift towards the Tories. And another thing is, see, Rishi Sunak is son of a doctor, and he's done very well academically. He went to Stanford Business School in the US. He had a green card. He's worked in Goldman Sachs and like private equity firms. So he comes from that elitist background. He's not a grassroots popular leader amongst the people. He was given a safe seat, though he's never lived in Yorkshire. He was given a safe conservative seat in Yorkshire to become an MP. And so he's kind of like those technocrats who come in and become a member of parliament. And as a technocrat, he became the chancellor of the exchequer, right? So, yes, there are accusations of him being elitist, but you have to look at the context. Had it been at the start of a fresh election where Conservative Party would have come in with a full majority, etc., he's not the one with grassroots support or like a lot of people wanting him as the PM. Probably Boris Johnson is more of such a guy, despite like also being educated in elite schools and being from a rich family background. He was a journalist and he has a lot of grassroots support. But given this whole environment and the amount of chaos that UK has gone through, probably Rishi Sunak is the cleanest dirty shirt out there, right? So that's what it is. I think Suella Braverman also kind of has done another U-turn, but there are like a lot of twists and turns in this story, right? It's like the final over of this T20 cricket. You don't know; it's not over till it's over. So let's wait and watch.
Right. Of course, there were a bunch of really funny memes as well. The English news portal Daily Star started a challenge against Liz Truss, claiming that a 60 pence worth of lettuce would outlast her in the UK. And of course, that has sort of prophetically come true. Then there were a couple of tweets as well. One person saying, "My son has lived through 4 chancellors, 3 home secretaries, 2 prime ministers, and 2 monarchs, and he's 4 months old." Um,
Make that three prime ministers soon.
Oh yeah, correct. And then another one which was hilarious as well. At the current rate, King Charles is set to beat his mother's record of living through 15 prime ministers by 2025. Right. Uh, all right. Moving on to some national news. Mallikarjun Kharge is the new Indian National Congress president. On Wednesday, Mr. Kharge became the new president of the Congress party, defeating Shashi Tharoor with over 90% of the votes in his favor. Often known as Solila the Sardara, a warrior who knows no defeat because of his 10 consecutive wins in assembly elections, is expected to take oath as the INC president on the 25th of October. This change in presidency is seen as unlikely to help the party pose a challenge to Prime Minister Modi led BJP in the 2024 general election. Well, Abhishek, we've been following this as well for quite a number of weeks now. It was an eventuality. We all expected that Mr. Karge would become the INC president. But are you, as a Tharurian, are you disappointed that it was not an alternate result?
Yeah, I'm not a Tharurian, but still, I guess if there is a better alternative for national politics, I think most of us will agree that it would have been Shashi Tharoor. But the way the whole nomination process happened, right, with Kharge's name put in the last minute by some of the bigwigs of the party who are close to the Gandhis, it was quite obvious that Mr. Kharge is the preferred choice for the Gandhi family, right? And so that signaling was done quite clearly, even though not officially, right? And so, based on that, the rest of the party members, followed the direction from the top, and the voting was done accordingly by them, right? And I think Mr. Tharoor initially, or his side, initially had put out some reservations about the process and how the election was not being conducted perfectly and so on. But the overwhelming one-sidedness of the results meant that whatever objections also he had, he didn't really had the ground to sort of press on any much further on those, right? As you said, Mr. Kharge got 90% of the votes, right? So that is as clear cut as it gets, right? Unlike the conservative race we have had recently, right? I think it was pretty close, maybe 60-40 is probably the extent of that right there. So, yeah, I think as we discussed, a vote for Mr. Kharge is basically continued confidence in the Gandhis, right, by the members. And one of the interesting things that happened is on the day of the election results, Rahul Baba was, having a press conference, right? And so someone asked him a question, and he replied that please ask Mr. Kharge about it, right? And by then the results also had not been announced. And so, I mean, of course, that became a mini controversy, which the party dismissed of saying that, okay, it may not have been announced, but it was pretty clear that Mr. Kharge was winning. But I think what it shows is, Rahul Gandhi has now a very effective counter to many questions, right? Where he can evade responsibility quite easily, saying, oh, this is not my area, or this is, not on my plate, right? And I thought that's a pretty clever way. I mean, if you think about it in a different way, right, it is possible that if you look at things now, 2024, BJP is the favorite, right? But perhaps they will have a better chance if Mr. Modi steps down before 2029, right? And so Rahul Gandhi can avoid the next defeat against his name, right? That can be put on Mr. Kharge's plate, and then he can come back as the person who's coming to redeem the party. So I mean, in a way, it's probably tactically good from his point of view. But yeah, let's see if any concrete steps are taken by the Congress to revive the party under Mr. Kharge.
All right, moving on. The FATF has removed Pakistan from its grey list. Pakistan was included in the Global Money Laundering Watchdog Financial Action Task Force, FATF, its grey list in June of 2018 for failing to do enough to counter terror financing and money laundering. On Friday, FATF removed Pakistan from the terror financing grey list as it welcomed the country's significant progress in improving its AML CFT regime. Technically speaking, in the assessment of the FATF, Pakistan has completed the tasks that it was given. In an official statement, India has noted that, to quote, as a result of FATF scrutiny, Pakistan has been forced to take some action against well known terrorists, including those involved in attacks against the entire international community in Mumbai on 26/11. Neerav, this is an interesting development.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So basically, Pakistan was on the grey list, and on the FATF grey list, it doesn't really change much for any other countries to deal with you. There's an FATF blacklist, and right now there are only three countries which are there. It is Iran, Myanmar, and North Korea. Right? So grey list is just that, oh, you are here, you're not doing enough to terrorist financing or anti-money laundering protocols. You're not following. It is easy for terrorists or criminals to access to finance via whatever channels, and that is why Pakistan was put on the grey list, like with other few other countries like Turkey. But see, this is very very political. I think Pakistan has done some actions, but out of like the 34 points apparently that they've done is like 2 points that they've taken some concrete actions on. So here, this is like probably one of those bargaining chips. I think, like, this is my personal opinion, doesn't reflect anybody else's views, but this is like a blow to India for India not towing the line of the US in the Russia Ukraine thing, right? There are a couple of these things which they have done. Basically, while Pakistan was on the grey list, it didn't change much. But say if it had gone down to the blacklist, then you could not deal with Pakistan. It would be much, much more difficult for anybody to visit Pakistan. And having a Pakistani stamp on your passport would make it very difficult to travel elsewhere. So, would have made any sort of business, access to international finance, access to World Bank or IMF loans made very much more difficult. So while Pakistan was just on the grey list, they were there since 2018, and some steps have been taken. Like Shehbaz Sharif has like kind of lauded this, said, see, the international community is recognizing what Pakistan is doing, etc. I think this is just a small bargaining chip which they've kind of used. To be fair, the Pakistani leaders are quite smart to get the international community on their side. And despite like whatever, as in despite multiple things where there is like direct clear action, there's direct evidence Osama bin Laden was found there. You have like a lot of these other terror groups who seek refuge there. In Afghanistan as well, like Taliban stayed in Pakistan for a while before they went back and before the US retreated, right? Despite all of this, somehow Pakistan manages to pull a Houdini thing, which is hats off to their leaders. Their army generals as well as their political leaders. Somehow they do manage it. Sometimes they are trying and like being a counterweight against India. So that is what it is. I think either ways, this doesn't change much for India. Maybe for Pakistan, they have a bit of like a financial crisis going on at the moment. There's inflation, so this facilitates their rollover of IMF loans and like China to kind of lend them again, etc. Because had they been on the blacklist, China couldn't directly deal with them. It is very, very important for China as well for the CPEC corridor, etc. That Pakistan not get onto the blacklist. Once you're in the blacklist, it's very difficult to transact with. So instead of them being in that gray zone, they've come back out. And yeah, see, it is what it is. I think the official spokesperson from India also, they've kept a neutral language, right? And they've said that we want to see continued improvement, etc., etc. They said, right, it is in global interest that the world remains clear that Pakistan must continue to take credible, verifiable, irreversible, sustained action against terrorism and terrorist financing emanating from territories under its control. So I think that is what is there. And India has kind of like kept quiet and not raised too much of a noise out here. But clearly, I think there are a lot of backroom dealings probably going on, and this is one of them.
So one of the things I would add here is that, as Nirav said, credit to Pakistan's leaders for always punching above their weight, right, when it comes to the realm of foreign policy. So I was just reading somewhere that over the last, let's say, 20 years, Pakistan positioned itself as the frontier state against war on terror, or for the war on terror, in the sense that they were at the forefront with Afghanistan and Taliban and all that, right? So the latest quote unquote scam that Pakistan is going to use for the next decade is climate change, right? And so what they are saying is that, look, we are a very vulnerable state facing the burden of climate change and global warming, and look, we have these massive floods this year, etc. So climate change will be the most used word, right, by Pakistan over the next decade as they try to, get the West to once again, look away at all their misdeeds, as well as, get funding, right? So yeah, it's a very interesting game that they play on in this arena, right? I mean, you can only say that you admire it in some way.
So I was actually watching an interaction with Dr. Jaishankar, I think with the Australian Lowy Institute or something, and he said, the three things that define our current circumstances are COVID, conflict, and climate change. Right. So I think change has emerged as a key sort of a geopolitical leverage or a matter that is of serious importance. Right. So all right, moving on. In some fantastic news, ISRO has launched 36 OneWeb satellites in its first commercial launch for LVM-3. On Saturday, ISRO launched a constellation of 36 broadband satellites developed by OneWeb to low Earth orbit on Sunday. The satellites were launched on board the Launch Vehicle Mark III, which is a redesignated version of the Geosynchronous Launch Vehicle, or GSLV, from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota. It's a historic mission. It has been possible because of Prime Minister Modi's support, as he wanted LVMG to come into the commercial market with NSIL in the forefront to operationalize our launch vehicles for exploring and expanding the commercial domain. Dr. Somnath, ISRO chairman, added. So, Neerav, this is fantastic news, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As in, see, this is one thing where India has very good capability in space, and India has kind of developed system where commercializing it and ability to launch satellites for other countries, right? And given like how much competition, like in the space race earlier, it was just US and Russia, and or the erstwhile USSR, and then after that you had China making big headway in as well, right? And India has proven to be like a low cost provider for these services. So I think this is great potential. So not just like it's our science and technology development, from like a commercial angle as well. We've done this. You've seen a bit of this in the movie Rocketry, right? Where they talk about this whole thing about like how you can like actually there are commercial applications and not just for India to launch its own satellites, but to enable other countries launch satellites via us, right? So I think all in all, it's like a great achievement. It proves ISRO. You're seeing a lot of private players get into space because in the US and Russia, the cost overruns, etc., because of government entities has been huge. We've seen Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, right? They have got into the private space market, but there instead of like a lot of commercial applications, that's like some of them, or like even like Richard Branson, is a bit of those vanity projects where you either want to go into space or man goes to the space and then comes back, and it's like vanity travel or those kind of things, right? Whereas like here, India comes in as a neutral, like non-aligned type of country. India doesn't have a track record of like installing like spying gadgets on like other people, etc. Where there's a lot more trust. So this is what is India launching satellites not just for itself but like for other countries as well. It helps our like terms of trade. So this is one new form of like a export in services. Effectively, we are providing a service and charging for it. So it's a very positive news uh, in every domain, right? And more of such successful launches kind of not only changes the perception about India, right? That it's a major space force to be reckoned with. It also helps. There are like side effects of like better technology for our own military, better perception, and human capital gets developed. And then because of this, more like other industrial and engineering applications are developed indigenously, right? So I think it's a very positive development, and hope to see many more of such satellite launches.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of space startups actually. I mean, I can think of Skyroot, Pixel, Agnicol, and so on. And there's, some amount of venture money that's going into this as well. Skyroot, for example, was founded by former ISRO scientists and has been funded by Balaji Srinivasan, Nitin Kamath, Mukesh Bansal, Anand Mahindra, and so on, right? So, yeah, fantastic stuff. I mean, and kudos to ISRO as well, for providing the facilities. And as I think, as the cost per load goes down, right, you're going to see a lot more of this stuff, right? Spectroscopy, plenty of applications as well, right? I mean, real world applications, agriculture, and so on, right? Not just asteroid mining or some such thing.
So this one, India right now only has like 2% market share of the commercial space exploration, or let's say whatever commercial space usage market, right? And so this particular series of 36 satellites is actually for a British or a UK telecom, or you could call it networking company, in which Bharti Airtel has some stakes, right? So yeah, I mean, the fact that this one went out quite flawlessly basically would definitely help India's positioning in the commercial market. Another thing is, had the Russia war not been happening, it's quite likely that Russian satellites would have been used for this process, right? And so some people are saying that this gives this whole Russia saga is an opportunity for India in the space commercial space market as well, right? Because that part of the market share is now open for grabs, right? Whatever Russia had been doing for other countries. So yeah, it's a good opportunity and a good demonstration of India of its capabilities.
Well, in more fantastic news, on Friday, India test fired a new generation of nuclear capable ballistic missile, Agni Prime ballistic missile, off the coast of Odisha at 9:45 a.m. During the test flight, the missile traveled its maximum range and all its test objectives were also met successfully. The defense officials said, with this third consecutive successful flight test of the Agni Prime missile, the accuracy and reliability of the system has been established. They further added that the performance of the system had been validated using the data obtained by a number of range instrumentation like radar, telemetry, and electro optical tracking systems deployed at different locations, including top down range ships at terminal point to cover the entire trajectory. Abhishek, again, more good news this time on the nuclear capabilities front. We covered some of this a couple of weeks back as well. I mean, there seems to be a continuing effort on this.
Yeah, I found the name a little amusing, right? Calling it Agni Prime. I mean, it's almost like a telephone, I mean, mobile phone or a Amazon Prime kind of a name. But jokes apart, I think this is a tremendous addition, let's say, to India's nuclear missile arsenal. As you said, this is the third successful test that they have done. I think it started in June 2021, and now this is the third iteration. This missile has a range of like 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers, which means it is pretty much specifically built to target Pakistan, right? Because it's not going to reach anywhere near China's mainland, right? So the interesting or fascinating part of this missile is, that it sort of has the ability to hit moving targets, right? That means it's advanced enough to change its navigation after its launch based on other inputs, right, of the target, which means it could possibly hit even targets at the sea, like aircraft carriers and so on. So yeah, I think some of the other features are that so it's basically replacing the Agni 1, Agni 2 sort of missiles which are currently there, right? And obviously built on a much better technology on all parameters, right? Including like 50% less weight and so on. So there is definitely improved accuracy, etc., right, for this missile. So yeah, I think, as you said, we recently talked about Arihant launching the Sagarika missiles from there, right, to demonstrate our nuclear triad, right, now from land, air, or sea. India is having nuclear missile launch capabilities. So yeah, I think welcome developments definitely on this front.
All right, with that, we come to the end of this Bharatvaarta Weekly. We have a couple of very interesting episodes coming up. Abhishek and Nirav spoke to Arpit Gupta, who's the Associate Professor of Finance at NYU Stern. Nirav, what can people expect from this conversation?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting conversation. See, Arpit has like a nice variety of interests, research interests. He's got a very interesting Substack as well as his Twitter feed, right? And so we spoke about things like electric vehicles, the coming transition. We spoke and how India could benefit from it. We spoke about India's manufacturing push in the whole PLI schemes, and then like a lot of like the about of like clean energy transition and specific areas like semiconductors, as well as like how India has pushed right from semiconductors to like low technology things like textiles and shoes. So, and comparing that to the East Asian model and how India has shifted its growth model, and now instead of copying the West, it's trying to copy the East Asian, Japanese, Koreans, and the Chinese, Taiwanese on the next growth trajectory. So it's very interesting. Abhishek was also there, and like it was nice dialogue, and please do check it out. It is a really nice episode, very short and concise, and with a lot of varied perspectives.
Amazing. Looking forward to that one. We also have Christopher Balding, who is an expert on the Chinese economy and financial markets. He spoke to Velina Chakarova in the Velina stock series that we run about how China will push its agenda and about Taiwan and the one China policy and all of that stuff. Do check that out as well. We'll put that out on perhaps Friday, right? The Arpit Gupta episode might come out on Wednesday this week. Look out for that on your feeds wherever you get your podcasts. Uh, Folks, please rate and review us on all of your favorite podcast platforms. I know I say this every week, but it's really important so that more people can discover our content. We work really hard to bring all this amazing content to you. So that would be really helpful. Um all right, from Abhishek, Nirav, and myself, wish you a very happy Diwali. Stay safe and take care, and Jai Hind.